Hey, everybody. Welcome to True Crime Paranormal with the Psychic Sisters. I'm Christy Brower here with my co-host and sister and partner in crime, Katie Weaver. Hey, Katie.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm good.
Good.
Just plugging away, it's almost Christmas.
It is almost Christmas.
Yeah. We're kind of hitting that before Christmas, then after Christmas period.
Yeah, we sure are. Yeah. It's going to happen whether you're ready or not, and then you're done. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. My house is too small to celebrate Christmas, frankly. It just is. I'm tired of Christmas already. I hate to say that. I'm not a real Scrooge, but, I'm like, oh, my God. I'm ready for this to settle down. Yeah.
Right. Right. Oh, I hear you. I'm excited for it. And then I always really look forward to the first part of January when we can just go back to normal.
Mm-hmm.
And just life can be normal. Food can be normal again. Your house can go back to normal. I really always appreciate that. So I enjoy the holidays and I like to celebrate. And then I'm like, okay, I'm done with this. I'm a take the tree down on New Year's Day kind of person.
Oh, I'm gonna take the tree down the day after Christmas kind of person. Mm-hmm. Yeah. These people that leave their tree up well into January. Oh God, no. No,
I'm ready for my house to come back.
Mm-hmm. Can't take it.
I guess if you have a lot of space, it might be different, but
maybe so. Well, our tree is it is deader than dead.
Oh,
no. Dropping a lot of needles, and I'm like, yeah, we're definitely taking this mofo down this weekend. Yeah.
My tree is faker than fake, so I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah. I wish mine was too. My family loves live trees, and I don't know. I don't know why a tree has to die every year so that we can put it in our house for a few weeks. It seems so wasteful and stupid.
That's what I feel.
Always haul ours out to the fire pit, and burn it in the spring and use it in a more useful way. But still, it just seems so wasteful and dumb. But, this is my last Christmas of having a kid living at home. And
that is something.
At least, coming and going. They're all college kids, so they all kind of live at home in various ways. But I just think after this year, we might do Christmas a little different around here. Not quite so intense. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's a little different when you don't have kids that want it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So we'll see. I'd be totally cool with a little Christmas tree on the mantle, really. So
there you go.
We'll see what happens. Maybe I'll get my way next year.
You never know. When you're an empty nester, you can do whatever you want.
That's what I hear. Yeah.
You're ready for that?
Yes, please.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, we have a case for you. This is a case that's been suggested, recommended, pled for several times by our listenership. And this is the Zodiac Killer. And the reason we want to talk about the Zodiac Killer is because recently there has been a deciphering of another one of his letters. And there's a lot of work still being done on this. We have not covered this case before. This is a very old unsolved case. This is a 50-year-old unsolved case. So I think, Katie, what I thought I would do is just kind of present the basics of the case. Yeah. And then we can get into the letters and we can get into theories and who we think maybe is the Zodiac Killer and a bunch of stuff like that.
Yeah.
Does that sound good? Mm-hmm. Okay. So the Zodiac Killer, he's also known as Zodiac or the Zodiac, is an American serial killer who operated in Northern California from somewhere around the late 60s to the early to mid 70s. Now, we don't know for sure because there are some
earlier killings.
Yeah, there's some earlier, and we'll talk about that there's some killings that for sure is very widely believed, yes, the Zodiac Killer did these. And then there's a whole bunch of other cases that are like, well, we think it might have been him. I mean, you got to remember, this was 50 years ago. We are not talking about great forensics at all.
No.
So I've just put up a video. If you're watching the video, I've just put up a picture of the sketch of the Zodiac Killer. Very famous. I'm sure you've seen it before.
Yeah. So
he murdered 5 known victims for sure, and attempted murder on 2 more who did survive him. At one point, the Zodiac himself, started writing to the police and to the newspapers, and he claimed to have murdered 37 victims.
Yeah.
Without knowing who he is, we don't know. right?
Yeah.
But we're going to talk about some of these cases.
But truly, I mean, some of those earlier cases, in the earlier in the 60s really could have been him.
Yeah, very much could have been him. Even some of the ones a little bit later into the 70s could have been as well.
Yeah.
So his case went cold and was marked as inactive in April of 2004 by the San Francisco Police Department. One of the things about the Zodiac Killer case is that there are several police departments investigating him, and there doesn't seem to be there kind of is a task force through the California Department of Justice. But then the city of Vallejo, Napa County, and Solano County in California all have their own cases on him.
Yeah.
But the California Department of Justice has maintained an open case since 1969.
Yeah.
So I want to tell you a little bit about the murders that we're pretty sure he committed first, and then we're going to get into some of the others that maybe he did, maybe he didn't, that maybe can give an indication of possibly who he is. So the first murders that were attributed to him are the Lake Herman Road murders. So what he liked to do was go find young couples on Lover's Lane and shoot them and kill them or stab them to death. That was the other weird thing about him, is that he didn't always use the same means of death. And that is very confusing. But his first victims were Betty Lou Jensen and David Faraday. This was on December 20th, 1968. So yesterday was the 52nd anniversary, actually, of this killing. So they were on Lake Herman Road. They were supposed to be at a school concert, but they went to Lover's Lane to make out instead, is what it appears to be. Not that that's a bad thing, but unfortunately they weren't where they were supposed to be, so nobody knew where they were. Yeah. So they were parked about 10:15 p.m. in a gravel turnout on this Lake Herman Road. Shortly after 11 p.m., their bodies were found by someone named Stella Borges, who lived in the area. So they had both been shot. Yeah. And killed immediately. They used some forensic data to determine that they could tell that another car had pulled into that turnout not long before 11 p.m. I don't know how they knew the time, but at least it was before this lady showed up. They believe he exited the car, walked toward their car. He feels he ordered them out of the car because they were both out of the car when they were killed. Jensen, the boy, he got out of the car first and was shot in the head. Wait, is that right? Hang on. Do I have that backwards? Okay, so yeah. Oh, no, yeah. So it wasn't the boy who got out first. It was Betty Lou Jensen who got out first. But as Faraday was getting out, the killer apparently shot him in the head and killed him right there. So then Betty Lou ran and was shot 5 times in the back as she fled, and she got about 28 feet from the car. And then from the tire tracks, they see that he just drove off. It's such a strange, way of killing, because he doesn't assault them. He doesn't interact with them at all. But it is something about them being on Lover's Lane together, obviously, because this happened several times.
Well, they're easy to surprise, He likes taking people by surprise, and you've got these couples that are totally wrapped up in something else. They're easy to sneak up on, easy to surprise.
They are. And I also really feel that there was some resentment there as well, that he wasn't someone who got to have those kinds of relationships. And so it made him angry. So then there were the Blue Rock Springs murder. And this was on July 4th, 1969, right around midnight. This is in Vallejo, California. So this is about 4 miles from the Lake Herman Road murder. So they were parked, just like the other car. Another car pulled up alongside them, but then drove away. And then it came back about 10 minutes later. I'm curious. I want to ask you if you have some feeling as to why this happened. So this car pulls up alongside of them and then just takes off and leaves. Comes back about 10 minutes later and parks behind them. So the driver of the car gets out of the vehicle and goes up to the passenger side door of the car, and he's got a flashlight and a 9mm Luger. So he shines the flashlight into, so this is Darlene Ferrin and Michael Magoo. So he shines the flashlight into their eyes before shooting at them, and he fires 5 times. So they were both hit with several bullets. Some of the bullets passed through Michael into Darlene. So then the killer walked away from the car, but apparently heard Michael moaning, and he came back and he returned and shot them both twice before driving away, thinking he had killed them. Now, the reason that we know all of this,
because Michael lived.
It's because Michael lived. So on July 5th at 12:40 a.m., so this is like 40 minutes after this happens, a man phones the Vallejo Police Department to report the attack and to claim responsibility for it. This was something that the Zodiac Killer loved to do. And of course, this is in the 60s.
Right.
How are they going to find it? You know, you do that now, they're going to track you with satellites and, you know, bring you down with a drone, but not then.
No.
He also took credit for the murders of Jensen and Faraday that had happened 6.5 months earlier. So this is when the police start to recognize that they've got a serial killer on their hands, because he's already, you know, gone after 4 people. They traced the call to a phone booth at a gas station at Springs Road in Tulum. It wasn't very far from from Darlene Ferrin's home, and it wasn't very far from the Vallejo Police Department. This is how brave this dude was.
Yeah.
So Darlene was pronounced dead at the hospital, and Michael survived even though he had been shot in the face, neck, and chest.
Yeah.
So this is the first time we get a description of the Zodiac Killer. Michael Magoo described his attacker as 26 to 30 years old, 195 to 200 pounds, 5'8", white male with short, light brown curly hair. I mean, as generic as you can get, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So then on August 1st, 1969, some letters start showing up from the serial killer. So the Vallejo Times-Herald, the San Francisco Chronicle, and the San Francisco Examiner get these nearly identical letters. They're handwritten. And each letter, so in them, he took credit for the shootings at Lake Herman Road and Blue Rock Springs. And each letter also includes 1/3 of a 408 symbol cryptogram, which the killer claimed contained his identity. So this is the code, the Zodiac Killer code, that has been, you know, attempting to be cracked for 50 years now.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out who he is. So the killer demanded that this letter be printed on the first page of the paper, or he would just drive around all weekend killing people. So the Chronicle published its third of the cryptogram on page 4 of the next day's edition. An article printed alongside the code quoted Vallejo police chief saying, "We're not satisfied that the letter was written by the murderer," and requested the writer send a second letter with more facts to prove his identity. He didn't drive around and murder anybody. And eventually all 3 parts of the letter were published. So this is what the letter said. I want to see, did I get this one? I was trying to post some of these in the video so that you could see them as well. I have lots of parts of letters. I just want to see if I have this part real quick. Because he wrote a lot of letters.
Oh, yeah.
A lot.
Yeah.
I don't have this one. I'm just going to read it.
He was loving this part.
Yeah.
Loving the attention.
The letter said, "I like killing people because it is so much fun. It is more fun than killing wild game in the forest because man is the most dangerous," spelled wrong, should be dangerous, "animal," spelled wrong, "of all. To kill something gives me the most thrilling experience." There is no punctuation in this, by the way. No. "It is even better than getting your rocks off with a girl. The best part of it is that when I die, I will be reborn in paradise," spelled with a C. And the I have killed will become my slaves. I will not give you my name because you will try to slow down or stop my collecting of slaves for my afterlife. Now, this was a very common theme in the letters that he wrote, that he fully believed that he was gathering slaves for the afterlife.
Yeah. Like, so, what the hell? Yeah. And yes, world's longest run-on sentence.
Yeah, world's longest run-on sentence. If you could see it, I'll post some other letters that I have so that you can see how poor his spelling is. There are lots of spelling problems.
Of that. I like killing because it is so fun.
Yeah.
That sounds like the kind of way a third grader starts a report, you know?
It does.
I like playing basketball because it is so fun. That sounds so sophomoric, like and then the spelling and the, all of it. Like, we're not talking, that's what's crazy about the cipher, and that it's been so hard to crack, because he's not coming across here as somebody who is smart or well-educated at all.
Not at all. I know. And that's been a real question about the code. Why could he write it if he could barely write English? Yeah. So here's another letter. I'm going to talk about it. And I just put it up in the in the video too. So on August 7th,
the idea of being the Zodiac.
Yes, yeah. This is where he calls himself the Zodiac. So he sent this letter to the San Francisco Examiner on August 7th of 1969, and he said, "Dear editor, this is the Zodiac speaking." So this is the first time that he has used this name.
Yeah.
And this was a response to the police chief's request for more details that would prove that he had killed Faraday, Jensen, and Farron. And he includes details about the murders which had not been released to the public, as well as a message to the police that when they cracked his code, they will have him. This is something he does pretty regularly. He writes these letters where he gives information that only the person who committed the murder would know. And because there were some questions about, maybe this is just some crazy person writing these letters after these murders and they're not even connected to each other. It just doesn't seem that way, because he knows things that that clearly he shouldn't know, that weren't released in the public. So then after those two letters show up, then the Lake Berryessa murder happens. So this is September 27th, 1969. So, he's kind of escalating. He went 6 months. Now he's gone from July 1st to September 22nd. So Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were picnicking at Lake Berryessa on a small island that was connected by a sand pit to 2 Oak Ridge. So a white man who was about 5'11", weighing more than 170 pounds, with combed, greasy brown hair, approached them wearing a black executioner's type hood with clip-on sunglasses over the eye holes and a bib-like device on his chest that had a white 3x3-inch cross circle symbol on it. We've all seen it. It looks like a crosshairs, and that becomes the symbol of the Zodiac Killer. Yeah. So he comes up to them with a gun. Brian Hartnell believed that it was a .45. So he told them this big, long, dumb story about how he was an escaped convict from jail with a 2-word name. Now, why he would say that, I don't know. He said that he had escaped either in Colorado or Montana. But actually, the police think that what he was referring to when he talked to them was actually a jail in Deer Lodge, Montana. And he said he'd killed a guard and stolen a car, and that he now needed their card money to go to Mexico because he couldn't keep driving this stolen car. So he had brought with him, this is interesting because there's a lot more planning to this than there were to any of these others.
Oh, he's even made himself a little uniform.
He's made himself a little, speaking of the uniform, I shall share it. I have a picture, a drawn picture of it, because it just gets creepier and crazier the further you go. But this is somebody's rendition of what the outfit looked like, which I think was a pretty good fit. Okay, so he tells him he needs his money and he needs their money and car. He had brought with him lengths of clothesline to make them tie each other up. But they didn't tie each other up tight enough because they really thought this was just like some kind of weird robbery. They didn't really feel like he was really going to hurt them. But then he drew a knife and stabbed them both repeatedly. Weird. You know, the first two murders were committed with a gun.
Right.
Now he's using a knife. Let's see. So then he hiked 500 yards back up to Knoxville Road, and he drew that cross circle symbol on the car door of the victim with a black felt tip pen and wrote beneath it, Vallejo 12/20/68, 7/4/69, September 27th, 69, 6:30. These are the dates and locations of the other murders. And I'm going to show you, I have a picture of what he scratched into the car, which is so weird. Like, I think this is the challenge of the Zodiac Killer, is that none of this makes any freaking sense, you know?
Oh, it does in his world, though.
Oh, definitely does in his world.
It does in his world.
The outside world. But this is just more of, I think, wanting to get credit. Like, this is more indicating these attacks are connected by giving these dates.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So then at 7:40 p.m., he called the Napa County Sheriff's Office from a payphone to report this latest crime. He wanted so much attention.
Yeah.
He first stated that he wanted to report a murder. Then he said, no, a double murder. Then he said he'd been the perpetrator of the crime. The phone was found still off the hook not long after at a Napa car wash on Main Street in Napa. Found by a radio reporter, Pat Stanley, who was only a few blocks from the sheriff's office. This was 27 miles from the crime scene, so he'd driven quite a ways to get away. Yeah. They did get a palm print from the telephone, but palm prints weren't as much of a thing in fingerprints until much later. So that really has not ever helped them.
Right.
So when the attack was going down, a man and his son were fishing nearby and actually heard them screaming. And they went and got help from some park rangers. And so they called the police, and the police came. Cecilia Shepard was conscious when they arrived and provided them with some details and description of the attacker.
Yeah.
So Hartnell and Shepard were both taken to the hospital in Napa by ambulance. Shepard lapsed into a coma during transfer to the hospital and never regained consciousness. She died 2 days later. But Hartnell survived to recount his tale to the press. And
it's so weird that in these murders, that in two of the Lover's Lane style murders, he was unsuccessful in killing the male.
I know.
You know, not for lack of trying, though, you know.
No, not for lack. Yeah.
Odd.
Definitely wasn't intentional that he didn't kill them, because that one, he went back and shot him twice. But yeah, somehow he wasn't all that good at this. Kind of a weird thing to say, but it kind of feels like that.
Yeah.
So then was the Presidio Heights murder. And this was only 2 weeks later on October 11th. A man entered a cab driven by Paul Stein near Union Square in San Francisco, asking to be taken to an address in Presidio Heights. Stein only drove him about a block before the passenger shot him once in the head with a 9mm, took his wallet and car keys, and pulled a piece of his blood-stained shirt off.
Yeah.
And then took off. They did also observe him wiping the cab down before walking away toward Presidio, which is interesting. He had some forensic awareness.
Yeah.
Now, there were some kids across the street who witnessed this whole event. They called the police, and a patrol car came that was only a couple blocks away. They actually saw him walking down the street, and he stepped into a stairway leading to the front yard of a home. and then they didn't see him again. I think they were on their way to the call and didn't realize who they were seeing at the time.
Yeah.
They actually saw him, and these boys from across the street saw him too.
Mm-hmm.
They considered him to be 35 to 45 years old, 5'10", tall with a crew cut, similar to but slightly older than the description of the teenagers who saw him said he was. But, I mean, the difference between 25 to 30 to 35 people age differently,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
and young people are going to see people at a different age than older people will as well.
That's my thought too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he always comes out to be about the same height. He's always white. He always has the same hair color.
Mm-hmm.
I think the age range is so
it's just
variable.
subjective. Yeah.
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 For some reason, they were initially alerted to look out for a black suspect. And that's why the officers drove right past him.
Mm-hmm.
Probably could have stopped him right there, but that was a mistake that was made.
Mm-hmm.
They did look for him, but they didn't find him.
No.
So it was initially thought that it was a robbery that had escalated. They didn't actually think this was a Zodiac murder at all.
Right.
And then the San Francisco Chronicle got a letter from the Zodiac, and in the letter was a piece of bloody shirt from the victim taking credit for the killing. This is the part where I go, this is not just a hoax with these letters. This guy, he literally had the bloody shirt,
Right. Yeah.
They saw him tear that shirt off, a piece of that shirt off. They worked with an artist on a composite sketch. The sketches, there's 2 sketches in the wanted poster.
Yeah.
And they look very similar.
Oh, yeah.
It's like several different sketch artists have drawn roughly this same guy.
Mm-hmm.
So they're pretty sure they're talking about the same person, at least in these cases. So that is the last case that is for sure a case that he did.
Right.
But there are so many more.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. So there were lots more letters. In October of 1969, he sent the letter confirming that he killed the cab driver and that he had the bloody shirt.
Mm-hmm.
He threatened that he was going to kill school children on a school bus. This was a threat he made repeatedly that never happened, but it was certainly something he was intentionally trying to scare people.
Mm-hmm. He mentioned killing them with a bomb or picking them off as they come off the bus, or he said some scary stuff about kids that had, people in California scared to death, of course.
For sure. In one letter, he said, just shoot out the front tire and then pick off the kiddies as they come bouncing out.
Mm-hmm.
Yikes. Yeah. So then on October 20th of 1969, somebody called, claiming to be the Zodiac, called the Oakland Police Department and wanted to know, demanding that one of 2 prominent lawyers, which was F. Lee Bailey or Melvin Belly. F. Lee Bailey is a really famous attorney. Appear on AM San Francisco. It's a talk radio show.
Mm-hmm.
Bailey couldn't be there, but Belly did appear on the show. And, they asked to keep the lines open because they thought the Zodiac would call. Mm-hmm. Eventually, someone claiming to be the Zodiac called several times and said his name was Sam. Belly, the attorney, agreed to meet him, but he never showed up. Mm-hmm. And they're not really sure it was the same person. They're not.
I don't really think it was. I feel like that was not. In that instance, that was someone else that was just messing around.
Yeah. Yeah. On November 8th of 1969, the Zodiac mailed a card with another cryptogram. This is the 340. This is called the Z340. That's what they call this cipher. Mm-hmm. Because it has 340 characters and it has remained unsolved for 51 years. Mm-hmm. It is now, some of it has been deciphered, but not all of it. Mm-hmm. It's strange because you'd think if you could decipher one of them, you could decipher all of it, but they haven't been able to yet.
No.
But there are some new letters out. Here's one that came out not long ago. It says, I hope you are having lots of fun trying to catch me. That wasn't me on the TV show, which brings up a point about me. I am not afraid of the gas chamber because it will send me to paradise all the sooner because I now have enough slaves to work for me where where everyone else has nothing when they reach paradise. And again, he's spelling paradise with a C.
Mm-hmm.
So they are afraid of death. I am not afraid because I know that my new life is life will be an easy one in paradise death.
Mm-hmm. Right. Now that's the portion of the cipher that was just cracked.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just cracked. And just in the last few weeks.
Yeah. By a mathematician and a couple of cryptologists that put their heads together and their technology together and managed to crack this portion of it. The thing is about it, it doesn't really say anything different than what he was already saying.
No,
There's
it's
nothing
the same
new
propaganda.
here. Yeah.
There isn't, except I have a theory around the word paradise. And I
Yes.
haven't found anybody else putting this out there, but I just feel like it's important to look at this. So
Mm-hmm.
there is a city called Paradise, California.
Mm-hmm.
And I did some research that indicated that there was a time in which Paradise, California was spelled with a C, not an S. And and it's not that far from where all these killings, it's 2 to 3 hours away from where all of these killings have happened.
Right.
And he talks about being in paradise in nearly
Mm-hmm.
every letter.
Yeah.
And I really question if that is in fact where he was living. If that was a clue, but because he was spelling it the old way, not the new way, that it may not have been picked up, because it comes across as this is his philosophy, this is his belief in the afterlife. But what if paradise with a C is a clue about where he was living? It just, I don't know, it just struck me like a ton of bricks after I read 2 or 3 of these letters, and I went, I mean, obviously he's got some deficits and his spelling is not great.
Yeah.
But why this spelling of paradise over and over and over again? And why say, you look at these letters and he says the word paradise 3 or 4 or 5 times in every letter.
Yeah.
Why? So very interesting. This is when it all just kind of stops. We think. There are a lot of killings that some people speculate were in fact him. And some of them are before these killings in 69 and 70, and some of them are after.
Mm-hmm.
So there's Robert Domingos and Linda Edwards. They were killed in June of 1963 on a beach near Gaviota. Sherry Jo Bates. Now we're going to get into Sherry Jo Bates because this is very interesting. She was stabbed and decapitated on October 30th of 1966 at Riverside City College in Riverside, California.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there were some similarities to the circumstances surrounding her death, not exactly. But there is a suspect that people are looking at really heavily now. A lot of researchers are looking at him, and his name is Ross Sullivan. And Ross Sullivan worked in the library at Riverside City College. And so he was in proximity to this victim. Mm-hmm. And there are real questions about if Ross Sullivan is in fact the Zodiac Killer. Now, you all know, if you are Zodiac Killer fans, if you're interested in this story, you know that there are a lot of potential suspects and a lot of suspects that have been suspected by people over the years.
Oh, yeah.
Let me tell you, though, there's a new, fairly new, it's 2017, documentary about the Zodiac Killer, and they talk a lot about Ross Sullivan. And one of the things that they do, because Ross Sullivan did a lot of writing, he liked to write creepy poems, apparently. So they took his poems, handwritten, and they compared them to the Zodiac Killer's letters. And he and the Zodiac Killer write in a very similar way, and they misspell certain words exactly the same way. The word twitch is misspelled, missing the second T, in a bunch of Ross Sullivan's writings and in some of the Zodiac Killer writings too. And, experts that analyze this kind of stuff have said that that's really unusual, that two people will misspell the same word exactly the same way multiple times. Also, there's this connection with Sherry Jo Bates, where so far they haven't found any connections between the Zodiac Killer and the victims that he's been affiliated with.
Right.
He actually, if he's Ross Sullivan, He worked in the library of the school where she went to school.
Right.
He also didn't come to work for quite a while after she was killed, several days, just didn't show up.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see.
That's not suspicious at all.
Right, yeah, he just didn't show up. He also was creepy and made people feel uneasy.
Yeah. Like, why did he still have a job?
Yeah, why did he still have a job? Here's a weird one. He always wore the same outfit to work to the library, and after Sherry Jo Bates was killed, he came to work in a completely new outfit. First of all, he always wore the same outfit. Ooh. Secondly,
yeah.
why did he disappear for days when this girl went missing and was killed and then come back in new clothes? I mean, that is very sketchy.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of sketchy, he looks like the Zodiac sketch. He looks quite a lot like him. Same vocabulary and writing style in his letters and the Zodiac letters. He was known to write creepy poems.
Mm-hmm.
He also wrote an essay on how to disguise handwriting.
Wow.
They had some questions about that the Zodiac Killer must have had some kind of code training. How did he know how to write this code in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. He moved to Santa Cruz in 1968, so he was in the same area when these things were happening.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the thing about Ross Sullivan. He died in 1977, which might explain why the murders stopped.
Right.
He had schizophrenia, and he had been in a state mental hospital.
Mm-hmm.
He died of a heart attack in September of 1977. He was only 36.
Yeah.
So he fits the right age group also. He was cremated, and his ashes were given away to a family member or a friend, and nobody can find them. So one difficult thing is that we don't really have access to his DNA.
Mm-hmm.
I do feel that we're getting closer on the Zodiac Killer.
Mm-hmm.
And that this is maybe the first real break we've seen that maybe really could have been him. I mean, there are a lot of them. We'll talk about a few of them, but I mean, you can't go through all of them because it's wild how many there are.
Yeah. No, we couldn't. We'd have to have a whole lot more than one episode to do that. And honestly, it would get really boring at some point.
It would, yeah. I will say that on March 22nd of 1970, Kathleen Johns and her 10-year-old daughter were driving to visit Kathleen's mother. They had a car come up behind them honking, acting like something was wrong, so they pulled over.
Mm-hmm.
And the man came up behind her and said, "I see that one of your tires is wobbling, like it's coming off. If you want, I'll tighten up your lug nuts." She said, "Okay."
Mm-hmm.
He said he was done. When he was done, she pulled away and her car tire immediately fell off.
Oh.
So he offered to give her and her daughter a ride.
Mm-hmm.
They got in the car with him, and then things started getting creepy, and she decided she wanted to get out.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't let her out, but he stopped at an intersection. She, who was pregnant and had her 10-year-old daughter, jumped out of the car and ran into a field and hid from him.
Oh, wow.
And they said that he searched for them for a while with a flashlight and couldn't find her. Finally just got in his car and left.
Wow.
So she went to the police and reported this.
Mm-hmm.
While she was there reporting this, she saw the drawing of the Zodiac Killer and said, "That's who tried to abduct us."
Mm-hmm.
Then, so he continued to write postcards, letters, and things to the press. He did stuff like send them a letter that says, "My name is," and then it was a 13-character cipher. I mean, he just loved screwing with them. He went on in one letter to say that he was not responsible for the bombing of a police station in San Francisco. Just in case they were wondering if he did it, he didn't.
Okay, then.
He did kind of admit to murdering a police officer, though, who was like had someone pulled over and was writing a ticket.
Mm-hmm.
He started writing at the bottom of his letters his crosshair symbol, and then it would say you know, Zodiac equals 10, SFPD equals 0, like he was somehow winning.
Uh-huh.
You know, he was always talking about that there was going to be a bomb. I hope you enjoy yourselves when I have my blast.
Yeah.
He would threaten that there was going to be a bomb somewhere. That really scared people because they had no idea where to find what he was looking for.
Right.
He also wanted to start people wearing some nice Zodiac buttons, like a button with his symbol on it. People, he wanted attention so crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was mad that people didn't start wearing buttons. And this is when he said he shot a police officer sitting in a parked car. They hadn't considered him a possibility as far as that was concerned. Later, he did write a letter in July of 1970 where he admitted to abducting Kathleen and her daughter. So at that point, then at this point, other than her seeing his picture on the wall, they didn't have anything connecting him with that. But in fact, they said yes. He also, now the new score was Zodiac equals 13, SFPD equals 0. I guess he was counting the officer he killed and the 2 people he abducted, even though they got away. I don't know.
Right. It was like he was counting all victims, you know. I mean, did this also include people he gave a dirty look to at the grocery store? Because he got to a much higher number than the PD ever did.
Much higher, yes. And that was the thing. I feel like he did a lot of killing that wasn't always in the same MO. And so they didn't have any idea, you know, that it was him. Okay. So there are a bunch of other murders and disappearances that they think he was involved with. A murder in Lake Tahoe, some murders in Santa Barbara. So here's the final letter that came from him. He went silent for 3 years.
Yeah.
And then they received a letter in 1974 praising The Exorcist as the best satirical comedy that I have ever seen. Yes. He was big on the Mikado. The Mikado is an opera, and he used to quote things from the Mikado. And here was the score on this letter. Me 37, SFPD 0. And that was the last letter that he ever sent. So there are so many people suspected. We've got, of course, Ross Sullivan. You know, was a potential. There was also Richard Marshall, who they thought might be. He kind of hinted, I guess, that he was the murderer. Why do people do that?
Right.
Really?
It's like we just have a crew of ill people here who are making this case harder by inserting themselves. And
he actually even sent a letter at one point saying he was the Zodiac Killer in 1974, but he called himself the Red Phantom, and they really didn't believe it was a Zodiac Killer email, considering that, you know, the Zodiac Killer called himself the Zodiac Killer, not the Red Phantom. Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, was investigated as possibly the Zodiac Killer in 1996. He worked in Northern California at the time of the murders.
Oh, wow.
He also had an interest in cryptography and threatened the press into publishing his communications, you know, all of his stuff. He was ruled out based on fingerprint and handwriting comparison. And he wasn't actually in California on some of the dates that they believed that he was killing people. Bruce Davis, who was a member of the Charles Manson family cult, was investigated, but there wasn't any evidence there, and that didn't go very far. So then we get into some people who accuse family members of being the Zodiac. This one is pretty wild.
Yes.
Dennis Kaufman claimed that his stepfather, Jack Terrence, was the Zodiac. He turned several items over to the FBI, including a hood similar to the one worn by the Zodiac. Also, he said his handwriting was similar, but they've never been able to connect him. Let's see. Where is another one I wanted to tell you about? I wrote this down somewhere else. There is a man who, in looking for birth father believes that his birth father, Earl Van Best, was the Zodiac Killer, and he's written a whole book about it.
Right.
And there are some similarities, but that's never gone anywhere. He says
but
the first time
they rule Van Best out with DNA.
Yeah, they did. Yeah. The son is really convinced, but it's not him.
Mm-mm.
There are so many more. Oh, Lewis Joseph Myers confessed to a friend in 2001 that he was the Zodiac Killer after he learned he was dying and that he wanted to cooperate. There were some connections between him and the case. He went to the same high school as some of the victims and worked around some of the victims as well. He was definitely in the same area. They have investigated him, but they've never been able to prove anything. They're just, Gary Stewart published the book, The Most Dangerous Animal of All, in which, he thought his biological father, Earl Van Best Jr., was the Zodiac Killer. There was also a theory that the Zodiac was a hoax altogether. There was a college professor who said that this was just somebody screwing around with the police and the press and claiming responsibility for murders that he didn't commit, that weren't even connected. It just doesn't make any sense. When you read the letters, he gives specific information about things that he couldn't have known had he not committed these murders.
Oh, and the shirt.
The shirt. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why would he have that?
Yeah.
My gut on this is that Ross Sullivan was the Zodiac Killer, and he died in 1977, and that's why nothing has ever happened since then. He was a very ill person and getting sicker, and that's why it's one reason why it was very erratic and that not all of the murders were the same.
Right.
Is that had to do with his mental illness.
Right. This wasn't your typical serial killer. It wasn't, but it doesn't mean that, this wasn't all done by the same person. I mean, essentially it was, but as his brain got more and more damaged and he got sicker, his behavior changed.
It did. And he clearly wasn't getting the help that he needed. And it's really sad, but I don't believe that the Zodiac Killer is still around at all.
No.
What do you think? Do you think it's Ross Sullivan, or do you think it's any of these others?
I do. I think it's been him. I think it was obviously him, and that I don't want to say it was shitty police work, but it was, but it wasn't. I mean, they really tried, but at the same time, like, I don't know.
For the time frame, I mean, now.
Yeah.
They didn't have the forensics that they have now. There was so much that they could have done with this information and with this evidence that they now,
I do think that I suspect that the girl that he killed at the college was his first. I think that she was rejected by her lots of times. I think that he was rejected by girls in high school lots of times. That he, because he was creepy and weird, girls didn't want anything to do with him. And that, when you said that you felt like, killing people on, in Lover's Lane type incidences was significant. I agree with that. And that this was somebody who, wasn't ever invited into an experience like that. And that there was deep resentment and jealousy for the boys and also for the girls. And that's where part of this was coming from.
She was killed in 1966. So she was 3 years before the Lover's Lane killings. And so, I 100% agree with you that she was his first.
I think that some of the killings that he thinks he did, he imagined. I don't think he actually killed 37 people. He had quite the world going on in his head. Like, this has nothing to do with Dungeons and Dragons, so don't think I'm making an actual comparison. But every time I hear this, I'm like, it's like he's playing Dungeons and Dragons, not that game, but a different one in his head, where he is the master, he's the lord, or he's the whatever, and he's taking
or he's the fugitive. In that one, he told this big story about being a fugitive. There were a lot of things like that I agree with you. I feel like those he was in a hallucinatory, delusional kind of state where he actually believed those things were true.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Just like, gathering his slaves. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a
Well,
hell of a case.
there's a lot of work being done on continuing to decipher the code, and that they really hope that they'll actually get to the name. But, here's the thing. Did he
I don't think
actually put the name in the code?
no.
Because I think he really enjoyed the attention, and he really enjoyed messing with the police and the press. I don't really feel like he intended to give his identity away at all.
No, he was never going to actually tell them who he was. He was just playing with them. Yeah.
That would end the game.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and he died young. He died in 1977, and so then it all just stopped.
Right.
Even the murders that are suspected to be ones that he did that were not that aren't for sure. None of them are past 1977.
No. If he were still here, he'd still be sending shit. He was enjoying it. Now, he did take a break from it, and the letters got more spread out and more sporadic. And I think that just had to do with the status of his mental health at the time.
Well, and spending some time in some state hospitals. He had, it's known that Ross Sullivan spent some time in some state hospitals, and I feel like there were periods when the killing stopped because he was incarcerated in a hospital. He was locked up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I guess we're saying it. We're putting it out there publicly.
That's right.
The Zodiac Killer is Ross Sullivan.
This will draw some comments. We know. It's fine.
Sure will. I just feel really strongly that it is him. And maybe we should do another show, because we're about out of time on this one, where we actually do some direct mediumship with him. We didn't do that in the show because we had so much to share, but I feel like we could do maybe even just a bonus to this show with some mediumship from him and see what we can pick up with him.
Yeah. Yep. I'd be in on that.
Yeah, let's do it. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, you guys, that's what we came here to present. Ross Sullivan is the
Zodiac Killer.
Nice. Well, don't forget, we will be live this week on Wednesday with case updates. We will not be live on Thursday because it's Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
If you
and Kate will still be fixing and making things.
Kate will still be making. No, she will have to finish so she can come to my house for Christmas Eve.
That's right.
She will have to have a stop date.
That's right.
A stop time. Please keep an eye on our new membership, Spirit School. We're having a lot of fun with that. If you're interested in the metaphysical side of things, we're going to be teaching classes and doing some group meditations over there. So check that out. You can always support us by going to our Patreon as well. If you love what we do and want to help us keep doing that, it helps us so much because, there's a lot that happens behind the scenes to make these shows happen. And we really appreciate your help and support. And if you want to suggest a case to us, go over to truecrimeparanormalpodcast.com. You can join our mailing list. You can see how to get a reading with Katie or I there, and you can suggest a case. So remember, we like unsolved cases. So feel free to suggest. We have pages and pages and pages of suggestions from all of you, and we are really enjoying going through them and presenting them. You'll notice we've presented quite a few, this one included. So thank you all very much for joining us, and we hope that you're having a very happy holiday, however you celebrate. That this is a lovely time for you.
Yeah. And however you spend it this year, we know that it's going to be different for a lot of families, and we get that, and our heart goes out to you for sure.
Most definitely. All right. Well, we are True Crime Paranormal with the Psychic Sisters. Have a great day.
Take care, guys.